So last week I performed a beat on the iPad on my rooftop, and this is that beat, and I wanted to kind of walk through how I made it. So one of the first things you might be able to see from here, and apologies for the angle, but I have the Launch Key Mini plugged directly into an adapter, a USB-C adapter, which plugs directly into the iPad, and that adapter also has a headphone jack. And so I have this really nice little self-contained studio. And a lot of the beat production was done doing this. When I use Logic Pro, or really almost any app, I am composing the MIDI myself rather than using audio loops. From time to time I will use audio loops or samples, but I like to mangle those if I do, and I generally like to compose most of what I do. So the first thing I did here was this little synth loop called Future Strings. This is an Alchemy synth. And if we look at the MIDI cell, you can see I've automated the cutoff here. So let it keep playing. And that is so that when we go into the chorus, trigger here, you can hear the cutoff is all the way up. And I think this showcases some of the power of Logic on iPad, which I know I've talked about a lot, but I think people are kind of underrating this app because it looks really simple. And there's ways in which it is really simple. But it is also deeply complex, and I think there's a lot that can be done with this that people aren't really even scratching the surface of. So after the strings, I also introduced a bass and a drum kit, and all of these are Logic Pro plugins. They're included for part of the price. This is the drum kit. And this is the bass. Another Alchemy. Then we actually have this sound, Liquid Wires. And another drum kit called Compact. After that we had Breathy Vox, solo and play. And I really liked how it added to everything in this section of the beat. But after this, I then get into sort of a breakdown part of the track, and that's where I introduce another bass. And this bass carries out through most of the rest of the beat. Oh, and this bass is another Alchemy. A lot of Alchemy stuff going on here. Arpatron is sample alchemy, which isn't quite the same. It's taking a sample and manipulating it, whereas alchemy kind of builds up a pseudo synthesis from different samples, is my understanding, plus effects and different parameter control. And you can see sample alchemy slicing throughout this sample here. I won't play the entire beat if you want to watch that. It's in last week's video. But this is kind of what all the sounds sound like together. Here we go. And all of this was composed either with the Launch Key Mini or with my Complete Control S61 Mark II, which is behind me here under this little cover. And that's part of what I love about the setup, is that you can have it be as simple as just the standalone tablet. You can have it in the Magic Keyboard or some kind of other stand to hold it up. I like the Magic Keyboard because I can actually just put the Launch Key Mini right on top of it, which is cool, and it props it up at the right angle. But sometimes when I'm recording different beats, I will just use the touchscreen. So this is an example of a beat I was working on the other day. All I had was my touch screen, and I had just plugged in some headphones into this adapter. And in this one, I'm actually changing the control surface here. So you can choose that on this little icon on the left. So instead of a keyboard, I'm using chord strips. This one I'm using the drum pads. This one I use just a keyboard. Same here. And same here. And I haven't color coded this. One thing I would like is if Logic on iPad did automatic color coding the way Machine and Ableton do, but it's not really a deal breaker, and it's pretty simple to do. If you want to color code a track, click the I icon, go up to Cell, and tap Color, and you could change it. And I tend to just go cascading, right? So let's say we start at purple, go to this track. I have to do it over and over again. I'm not sure if there's a quicker way to not have to go to that top level every time. But it makes it pretty easy to color code. Yeah, there you go. And to me, you don't have to use a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. I ran Logic on an 11-inch, and people are doing it on iPad minis. My eyes, I have a bit of a reading prescription, and so I do actually prefer the bigger screen, but you can get away with much smaller iPads if you want to, which is cool too. But this is almost the perfect size for me to have enough screen and control to really do what I want to do, but then also have it, be portable, be very compact, easy to fold up and put away, and easy to expand with, this is my quick lock laptop stand. I get questions about it a lot. There's a link in the description if you're interested. Under my gear stands, I've used this with almost all my gear. Plop it on a quick lock stand, get the iPad going, get a keyboard going, or have the complete control over here. You can take a simple screen into a whole studio, which I really like. And personally, I think people are underrating Logic on the iPad. I get that it's frustrating, it's a subscription, but it's also a fairly cheap subscription, and I'm pretty happy to pay it. To me, this is one of the few devices and or pieces of software, or both, because it almost does feel like a hybrid between a DAW and DAW-less. Even though it is a DAW, there's something about the interactivity that makes it feel more like a DAW-less device. But this is one of the few that feels like almost an infinite ceiling, and there's very few things I feel like it's missing. It's not perfect. From time to time there are glitches. One of the ones I notice sometimes is drum kits. When you first load them, there's a delay in hitting the keys. So let's load a new track and see if we can see that. Well, now it's instantaneous, so glad it's working, but I'd seen delays before. Well, that's cool. There's a lot you can do here, and I believe you can actually replace these pads. So if you go to Drum Machine Designer, you have empty pads, right? And so then you can hit edit and load up what you want in the pads. And what's cool is you could load up splice samples, right? So you could go here, go to splice samples, go to deep end hits. Sure. So now we've got this kick here. Get another kick just to have it. Go to hats. Short. Open. And now if I slide that away. Okay, there you go. I'm not, because I'm in edit mode. Duh. And you still have that same pad velocity control, so lower right corner or just bottom is quiet, louder the higher up you go. Wow, I chose a horrible close set. But you can build a drum kit out, which is nice. You're not just stuck to whatever drum kits that already come with Logic, which is cool. Yeah, overall, I do think that this is an underrated setup, and I think there's a lot of room to grow and a lot to learn. Some of that automation stuff I showed in that first beat, you could dive way deeper into per cell, per track, and automate. And something I did with that first beat that I didn't talk about is I recorded a linear version of this. So you can record your performance by making sure that this is highlighted, this icon here. That will allow you to record into this linear arrangement by performing your live loops, which is how I like to compose. Once you're here, you could do even more automation, or you can just export your stems out or export a whole beat, which is cool. So if I hit this drop down arrow, export, you can do all tracks as individual audio files. You can make sure you're not normalizing, you can include effects, all of that, or you can not. You can go the entire length of the project, or you can choose a length, which is cool. And you can have it be either compressed or uncompressed. If you're exporting your stems for someone else, I recommend leaving them uncompressed, but once you do that, you can share and it'll just go through the entire track and export them all as stems. This is something you couldn't do in GarageBand, and it was a huge limitation, an artificial limitation that shouldn't have been there, but it's not there in Logic, which is awesome. And so to me, I think, between the fact that you could fully mix and master within this app if you wanted to, this is a little not as good as it could be, but let's say we go to the stereo out, we take an effect like Fab Filters Pro L and show details, and now we've got basically a straight up mastering plugin here, and we could go modern loud. And of course, you would probably want to actually take the time to learn this application instead of just throwing it on a basic preset. But my point is you have access to this whole mixer. You could be applying EQs and really getting your mix down, and then actually having master effects on the stereo out, or you could export everything as a mix and then re-import it as an audio file and then just affect that master track as well. You can plug in an audio interface very easily. I have the Audient ID14 Mark II, which works really well, and it's just USB-C to USB-C. And with that, you can add real instruments, record your voice, plug in a microphone. There's so much you can do with this, and I don't know, I just feel like people are super underrating it. To me, it's almost the perfect combination of software and tactile hardware-like feeling, especially with adding MIDI keyboards. I will say though, I do think it's missing MIDI learn. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. So you can't really use knobs and things like that. I don't really care about that, but it'd be nice. And it would be really cool if someone like Novation or Native Instruments or Arturia worked with Apple to create a hardware keyboard that mapped one-to-one with Logic, so that, say, anytime I select an instrument, these knobs automatically controlled parameters on that instrument, similar to how they do in Ableton with Ableton devices. That would be really cool. The drum pads, I believe, do work, but it's a little bit chaos, and frankly, that's where there is room to grow here, is MIDI keyboards compared to an actual DAW. But on the other hand, no other DAW that I'm aware of runs on a device without fans. They can run this quickly and with this low latency without any crackling, and it allows you to essentially have built-in MIDI keyboards and controllers per track that can have different control surfaces. So this could be a drum kit, but this could be a keyboard, and this is being clunkier because I have a certain kind of record enable setup. If we go back to rain beat, for example, every time we click the instrument, it properly changes. I can't remember exactly what I toggled here, but this is what composing is normally like, and it's very fluid. And tactile. And so again, you can augment this with MIDI controllers, with an audio interface, with all this stuff. But really, at the end of the day, all you really need, and need is a strong argument because you could just use the speakers built in. But if you want to use a good pair of headphones, you have to have a USB-C to 3.5 millimeter headphone adapter, which is really frustrating. Every iPad should have a headphone jack, in my opinion. There's no excuse to not have it. And really 2 USB ports would be really sick, but at least a USB-C port and a headphone jack, because having to sacrifice your power port for audio is really kind of dumb and annoying. I get around that using this adapter here, which is no longer for sale, but basically just look for a USB-C adapter that has PD power, multiple USB-A ports, and a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And then you can kind of get around this limitation. And then I got a really small USB-A to USB-B cable the other day, so that I have a much shorter cable connecting this small controller to the adapter. But yeah, I just really like this setup. If I had to pick one music setup to move forward with, it would probably be this 12.9 inch iPad Pro with Logic Pro, a nice MIDI keyboard, and then potentially augmenting it with other plugins you can get, and with hardware synths if you wanted to, and just run them into your audio interface. To me, this is like the future. This feels like I'm touching the future of music production. At least that isn't, AI automatic generated bullcrap that I don't want to exist, but I can't control. But if you're somebody who likes to be hands-on and produce and actually make stuff, I think this is such a cool setup for that, and I do highly recommend it. Anyway, share your thoughts below. Is this something you'd be interested in at all? If not, totally fair. Let me know why. Thank you to my Patreon patrons. I am considering ending the Patreon, and I'll probably make an official announcement when I decide to do that, first for the patrons and then on the channel. But it means a lot that people have supported the channel above and beyond just liking and subscribing and all that stuff that I really appreciate people doing. Anyway, apologies if I seemed a little off this week. I've been a little burnt out. Glad to have a long weekend. Grateful for that. I hope you have a good week ahead, and I'll see you soon. Bye.